So my name's Gabe Sawhney, and I'm a new media producer, game developer, and artist. I'm here at the GameON Finance Conference representing my company 33 Magnetic, which I founded with my business partner Corey Golding. And we're producing a mobile game called Echelon that was was one of the 10 projects selected to be in the Telefilm Great Canadian Video Game Competition. And so that was last year. We've been working on it for the past year or so, and are at the point now where we're almost have our production budget financed. So we're going to go into production pretty soon on that game. I'm a technologist, self-taught, sort of hacker type. I learn technology as I need it. I studied in university architecture and film, not intending to become an architect or a filmmaker, but just because I wanted that education to complement my tech background. And after that, I went to the CFC Media Lab, the Canadian Film Centre, what was called the Habitat program at the time. And that's where I, with two others, founded the project called Murmur. It's an audio documentary project that we've launched now in 8 cities and 4 countries, where we record and make available people's personal stories about specific places in the city. That got me really interested in mobile and the idea of locative media, and combining my interest of media and urban space. So now what I'm really interested in is this idea of media and urban space, contextual computing, the way that our like handheld computer sort of mediated experiences can be affected by the context of the urban environment, based on location, based on who's around us, based on whatever factors. So Echelon is a game where it's a proximity-based game. So as it uses Bluetooth, and as you walk around the city in public spaces, the subway, the park, the mall, you run into, you're within range of another player, it'll notify both players, say that, hey, there's another player nearby, do you want to play Echelon? And if you do, then each of the players gets half of a riddle, and they need to find each other and speak in person, face to face, tell each other their half of the riddle, and then together solve the riddle and punch the answer back into their phone. And so we know that they were in the same space, they met, they spoke, they got the riddle right, and then score points accordingly. So it's a game where you, the way that you play the game and the way that you score points in the game is by talking to strangers. It's a pretty different approach, and it's pretty different from most mobile games. So we want to make it free to play, and it'll be ad supported, and that's a trend that we're seeing growing more and more in the mobile game space. So we don't want to restrict it to those who want to pay a subscription fee or something. We want to make it free to play to encourage people to play, and then use advertising for revenue. So at this point, we've got a lot of basically the business stuff is in really well positioned. So we've got a business plan and all of that planning, and we have done a bunch of tech demos. We haven't done a full prototype yet, but that's basically where we're at right now. We're working on a full prototype, and as soon as we finish close our financing for production, we're going to begin production. So I'm expecting that we'll be around the end of the year. We'll have a completed game. Well, I mean, the game. I think one of the things that makes the gaming environment really interesting right now is the way that it's totally expanding. I mean, console and PC and handheld are still the core of what's the core of what makes up the sales in that space, but casual games and web-based games and digital distribution and all of that stuff is growing, as well as mobile, which is what we're working in. So transitioning from a sort of like web or online or new media into that sort of fringe what's currently fringe, but I think is going to grow really fast. Casual games, flash games, web games, mobile games was relatively smooth because I feel like I already understand a lot of the technology, a lot of the revenue models, and all of that stuff. So it wasn't so bad. I couldn't go into consoles. That's a pretty different world, very different from what I'm used to. But it's interesting. It's sort of like in between, I guess. It's like a crossover between the game space and the web space. But as well as with the growth of social networking and those kinds of things, and as all that stuff comes together, it's cool. The Toronto, and I mean the GTA in general, but Toronto in particular, is really interesting for how many people here are working in, or how many really cool people are working in new media and interactive and technology. And it ranges. I mean, there's a lot of different communities, from like the art community that maybe represented by InterAccess, the art gallery, and the Flash community here is amazing, really strong. That's centered around the FITC festival, and they just opened a new gallery, Pixel Gallery in the Rich Media Institute in Kensington Market, which is a really great space. The Barcamp community, which is really strong and is always having events. The game developing community is comparatively small in Toronto, but there are some companies doing really great things, kind of under the radar here, and a bunch of others. So it's interesting that there's like all these different communities. There's a really great community of people in working on technology for nonprofits. The Drupal community here is really strong. So it's an awesome place to be for all of that stuff.